So I've been investing in real estate over the last 6.5 years, and in that time, I've made millions of dollars doing so. I started with one strategy, but over time, I added more and more strategies to my toolbox. And so in this video, I'll be talking about the 10 ways that I've made money in real estate. And hopefully as I go through each of the different strategies, maybe I mention something that, it's up in your alley or speaks to you, and maybe you decide to pick that as the lane to run in. Or maybe you're like me and tell yourself, hey, I want all of them. Whichever way, hopefully this video helps you decide what you should do. But if you're a beginner, stick to the end, because I have a pro tip for you if you're just getting started in this business. So let's jump right in. Generally speaking, there's three broad categories, or I should call them umbrellas, for you to make money in real estate. There's buy and hold, real estate deal service, and fix and flips. Now there's tons of different strategies in real estate, but each of them could fall into one of these different umbrellas. I will start out with how I started getting into the game of real estate was through wholesaling, which probably is very popular these days. So wholesaling is a deal service. So what I mean by deal service is that you're not necessarily investing money into the deal. You're performing an active service and getting paid for it. So in the world of wholesaling is simply going out and finding discounted properties from distressed property owners, and you're getting them under contract on an A to B contract. And then you're going out, obviously, and marketing that contract and that house to find end buyers and investors who would buy it at a higher price, and you make the difference. Now, it's still a great deal for the end buyers and investors because you're still heavily discounted from full retail. And those guys are further in the wealth ladder in real estate, where they're looking for other things like appreciation or even just tax benefits and a wealth shelter. So you find a contract or a great deal, A to B, maybe in this case, maybe it's 100,000, the property is worth 200, and maybe you wholesale it to an investor for 115,000, and you make $15,000 difference. So you're providing a service of finding great deals, and investors are paying you huge chunks of cash for doing so. So that's wholesaling. Another strategy is fix and flip. So after, I did a couple wholesale deals, obviously, if you look at the chain or the verticals, if you call them, the first one is wholesaling. You're at the bottom of the vertical. You're going out and doing the hard work of finding discounted properties. You're door knocking, you're cold calling, you're doing gruesome tasks, but you're getting compensated pretty well for doing so. Ultimately, who do you sell that contract to? You sell that contract to investors, and they either do one or two things. They either keep it in their portfolio as a buy and hold and get appreciation, depreciation and long-term wealth creation doing that, or they add money and invest more money into it, fix it up, update the property, make it look modern, and sell it at a higher fee. So ultimately, you're making them more money as a wholesaler. You're making the investors more money. Either they fix and flip it, or they keep it in a portfolio. So you as a wholesaler, you ought to graduate. After you do a couple deals, you ought to start looking for keeping more of the margin, right? So now, instead of just taking the margin of finding the discounted properties, now you take the margin of finding the discounted properties, but also fixing it up yourself, because now you have a little bit more capital. So fix and flip is another real estate strategy. So after I wholesaled a ton of deals, I've wholesaled hundreds of deals and made tons of money doing that. That's how I made my first million in real estate. After I did a couple of deals, I then wanted to obviously grow in my investment journey. So I took the leap, and instead of wholesaling one of the deals to an investor, I kept it for myself, in the sense to fix and flip it. I partnered with an investor on my very first fix and flip. I found the deal, and I partnered with an investor, and I took a bigger portion of the profit. So I took, I believe, was 55-45, and that was very generous of me because it was my first deal. I wanted to just, get the ins and outs of dealing with contractors, managing city permits, and redesigning the property, and just understanding that whole game. I hadn't been exposed to it at the time, so I gave up a good bit of the profits to learn that. So fix and flip. And then ultimately, after a while, I started buying property for rentals. So right now we've talked about 3 ways. 2 of the ways are active income, wholesaling and providing a deal service. which is finding discounted properties. Fixing and flipping, you're transforming the properties and modernizing it, adding value to the property, adding value to the neighborhood, and you're getting paid for doing so. After you fix the property, you list it on the market, you get the full retail value for it, and you make the difference between how much you paid for it, the cost of getting it renovated, less fees of closing, and whatever is left is your return. Rental. So when you buy a property, obviously humans have a basic need. They need shelter, and housing is a very, very basic human necessity. So every single month, renters have to pay rent, and as investors, you get the difference between how much you pay to service the loan or own that asset versus what the renters pay. The difference is what is called cash flow. And so that's another way to make, in this case, passive income in real estate. And I have a bunch of rentals that make me cash flow every month. Now, on the rentals, there's also several different, it's a buy and hold strategy. There's several different strategies. So you could have, what I talked about is the traditional, rental, traditional. You can also have short-term rental. So if you heard of short-term rentals, obviously it's very popular these days. Airbnb, when you go on vacation, you stay in a house instead of booking a hotel. You just get different, better amenities, more comfort. If you're traveling as a group, it makes it more of an experience. You're building more camaraderie with your folks. There's all these different benefits. Now, short-term rental, you have to furnish the property. So in this strategy, you're buying it either creatively or with cash on the acquisition side. But how you're making money is through buy and hold, and how your exit strategy is short-term rental. So you're listing it on online travel agencies like Airbnb, VRBO, Booking.com, and the like, right? And you're furnishing the property, making it look all nice. You have high turnover. It could be short-term rental, it could be 3-day stays, 4-day stays. But the benefit is you're able to amplify your cash flow by doing that. Now, it's a lot more upfront investment because you have to furnish it. You have now cost of running that property. It's more like a hospitality business now, because now you have to, pay to keep the lights on, the cleaning, keeping up with supplies, fumigation, and things like that. Whereas on a traditional rental, all of that, those housekeeper responsibilities are typically delegated to the tenant. The benefit though of short-term rental is that you are able now to amplify your cash flow. So instead of $500 a month on a good, long-term rental, you're now able to make, $1,500, $2,000. A lot of my short-term rentals make me at least $3,000 every single month because of the strategies in which I buy them. I buy them creatively, so that gives me a very lean capital structure to have a higher profit margin. So short-term rentals. Another exit is mid-term rentals. So notice how all of these are still rentals, but they're just different types of rental strategies, right? Traditional rentals are typically a lot of times minimum 1-year leases. You could have it rented for 2 years. That way you have no headache. But again, there are pros and cons, right? If you rent it out for 3 years, 4 years, now you don't really, except you build it into your contract, you don't really have time or the avenue to correct your rent. So now you have economic vacancies in the sense that you're renting way below market value. Mid-term rental, so it's a little bit in between of long-term and short-term rentals. You're renting it mid-term to longer than short-term, maybe like a month, 3 months, 6 months at a time. But it's the same idea as short-term rental, where it's all furnished and you're running like a hospitality, where your avatar of clients are different. You're marketing to, I've got lots of these midterm rentals where an insurance company would book my property for 6 months at a time. I've had that happen a couple of times, where they pay anywhere from $5,000 to $7,000 every single month, because the insurer, or I don't know if it's the insurer, but the person who they are covering maybe had an insurance policy with them, and maybe your house got damaged, or maybe they were displaced during a hurricane or natural disaster, or whatever the case may be. And now maybe renovations are being done to their house and they still need a place to stay. So the insurance covers them during that period, and it's very, very healthy typically. So midterm rentals are very good. They're not as, except you particularly market to them, I would say the volume is less than short-term rentals, typically. So that's another strategy. So we've talked about fix and flip, wholesale, and 3 strategies with rentals. Now, another buy and hold strategy is wraps. Before we jump into wraps, let me fill out some of these columns a little bit more. So on the real estate deal service, another service that you could provide without actually investing in the deal is by brokering lending deals. So I've made money brokering lending deals. Brokering lending deals. And what do I mean by that? A lot of times when you're dealing with, one of the benefits of investing in real estate is leverage, right? You don't need to have the full amount of the cost to purchase the property before you can, invest or play or get into the game, right? Versus other asset classes like gold or whatnot. If you're buying 1 ounce of gold, you have to have the full equivalent. Now, obviously, in today's market, there's different leverage strategies that are above my head, but one of the benefits of real estate is leverage. People who do deals, fix and flip deals, go to hard money lenders or private money lenders to give them money to invest. Maybe you have individuals with high paying jobs, maybe doctors, lawyers, whatever the case may be, and want to play in the game of real estate but don't have the time. They may just say, hey, here's $50,000 to cover your renovation cost and pay me 10% of back in 3 months or in 4 months, whatever the case may be. Or hard money lenders that lend to the asset. And it's like, okay, you've got a great deal. I'll fund your purchase price and your renovation, and you just pay me monthly interest and origination fees and things like that. So when you're brokering lending deals, what you're doing is you're going out and finding these fix and flippers who need the funds, and you're connecting them with hard money lenders or private money lenders that have the funds, right? So it's a lot like wholesaling. That's why it's a service-based, business, right? You're connecting. You get what is called a connector fee, or what I call, broker fee, because that's how typically I get paid on the HUDs. Is they just put a line item that says broker fee to my company. But when you're brokering lending deals, you're just connecting 2 people. When you're doing wholesale deals, you're just connecting 2 people. You're connecting the distressed seller to the investor. And lending deals, you're connecting the borrower, this is the fix and flipper, to the lender who has the money. And you can do it several different ways. There's several different strategies. Even in wholesaling, you can wholesale, mostly, I talk about wholesaling, houses, like single family houses, but I've wholesaled land, just raw land. I've wholesaled even notes, right? Someone who has a note and just wants to cash out the note, I go find someone who wants to get that recurring income, connect the 2 of them, and make the difference. So you can wholesale anything. So you can, in the world of real estate, you can wholesale commercial deals. Now, I haven't really delved into the commercial world, but it's also a venues that you can make bigger checks because the asset prices are bigger. So brokering deals. Another one is transactional funding. So transactional funding, and if you don't know about this, I did a video on how I made $2,500 in less than 2 hours doing transactional funding. So if you haven't watched that video, go and watch it. It's a great video. But anyways, it's also a service-based business, right? I'm not investing in the deal. I'm just providing a service. In this case, I'm actually the lender, transactional lender, and getting paid a fee for doing so. So, I do it for wholesalers, predominantly EMD requests, maybe, or even double closes. So, for example, in a wholesale deal, the middleman, who's the wholesaler, maybe is making $50,000 on the deal. And he wants to protect that, because maybe if the seller, which is on the A to B side, sees how much he's making on the B to C side, they may go cold feet. So the wholesaler says, you know what, I'm making 50,000. I need 100,000 to actually close and buy the asset instead of just assigning it. I'm going to buy it and then turn around and sell it in 15 minutes or less than an hour, so that on the A to B side, the seller doesn't see anything that goes past the A to B side, because all he sees is, hey, I'm bringing $100,000 to the table and I'm purchasing the property. He doesn't know that in an hour, I'm taking that same property that I now own, I'm no longer assigning, and I'm just selling it to an end buyer for making my fee. As a transactional funder, the wholesaler needs that 100,000 to close that property on the A to B. So they come to me and they say, hey, I need 100,000 to fund this deal. I already have an end buyer lined up. It's going to happen simultaneously almost. And so just give me the money for 1 hour and the title company will send it back to you. So I do that as well. Now that's, again, earlier in the video, I talked about how over time, I've just kept adding strategies to my tool belt. When I started, I didn't have the funds to be a transactional funder or a transactional lender. Now I do. So if you need money on transactional deals, like what I explained, double close or EMD requests or refinances or things like that, which go visit fastdoubleclose.com, fill out the form, and I'll be happy to fund your deal. So that's another way. On the fix and flip side, you have a strategy that I've utilized and I'm utilizing a lot more in this market. It's called Novations. So on a fix and flip, you're buying the property from the seller. You're typically going to a hard money lender, like I said in the past, to get the money to buy the property and do the renovations. Obviously, you're putting up, maybe 10% of the purchase price because the hard money lender typically requires skin in the game. But in innovation, you're bypassing all those lending fees by going to a hard money lender to help facilitate the transaction. Instead, you're using the seller as the bank or as the funder. And how does this work? So you're basically partnering with the seller. So I'll go on a deal, and it doesn't work on every deal, but it's just a good tool belt, tool to have in your box, because it comes in very handy when it does work, because it could save you, $10,000-$15,000 in hard money fees or lending fees that you would albeit have had to pay to the hard money lender. So on a novation, you're basically, going to the seller and saying, you know what, I'll bring my resources. I'll bring capital. I'll bring my resources with my contractors, and I would renovate this property, and then we'll list it. I'll bring the realtor who would be, very competitive just because I bring him volume and all these other resources I can bring to the table. You don't have to worry about the headache of fixing the property, hosting showings, or managing contractors, dealing with city or permits or whatever. I'll do all the work, and then we'll list it on the market. And when we get an end buyer, then you get paid a set agreed price that we have agreed on at the beginning. And I'll get the difference between the price that we agreed on and the price that we end up selling on the market. So in that case, I don't have to go to a hard money lender and get funds to buy the house, because now I just partnered with the seller and I'm investing, money into his property or his or her property. And I just bypassed having to, pay a bunch of origination fees and stuff like that to the lender. Now, it doesn't work on every single transaction, because sometimes sellers need the money right now, and they're not going to allow you to wait 2-3 months before they can get the money on proceeds from the sale. But again, just another great way to do it. And sometimes you don't even invest too much. I did a deal where I invested literally less than $1,000 into fixing the property. All I did was clean out all the windows, install latches on it, do a mold remediation, and we listed it. And I made the difference of what I made was $20,000. So again, all of that $20,000, it would not have been a deal if I didn't have this strategy to bypass all those costs to still make a deal happen. Because albeit that wouldn't have been a deal, because all that $20,000 is not enough spread to go the traditional route, I would say, of go and get a hard money lender. So that's novations. So jumping back into wraps. Wraps is an exit strategy where you're basically becoming the bank. And if you don't know, banks make the most on every single real estate transaction. If you purchase a property at 6% interest rate, just look at the amortization schedule and the interest column of how much interest will be paid on that loan over the life of the loan of 30 years. Now they're even doing 40-year loan products, right? You probably pay for that house 2-3 times over in just interest payments. So wraps is similar. You're becoming the bank, right? Because banks don't approve everybody for loans, right? About only 60% of people who apply for loans actually get approved. And the reality is, if people didn't think that they would get approved, they wouldn't apply in the first place. So the pool of non-qualified buyers is actually bigger than qualified buyers. So when you're doing the wrap strategy, you're buying the property either with cash or creative, whatever the case may be. You've acquired the house. Now, you are selling the house to non-qualified buyers and you're charging them a premium interest rate for that, for a shorter home ownership, right? So if the banks were at 7%, now you're giving them a shorter home ownership, but you're charging them, 2 points over that or 3 points over that, maybe at a 10% interest rate. And so you now sit back and become the bank, and you're no longer worried about, the typical headaches of a landlord, where you're worrying about repairs and things like that. Because if your toilet is broke, you don't go call Bank of America and say, hey, my toilet is broke. So it's similar when you're in wrap, you're selling a wrap, you become the bank. The seller or the buyer is now the owner, even though he's making monthly payments every month, including interest. You're getting interest income and you're just sitting back and collecting a check every month. I love this strategy. And this is, again, you evolve over the years. I started with rentals. I started with flipped wholesaling. I then built a sizable portfolio with rentals. I'm now focusing on this. This strategy now is what I'm focusing on, because I no longer want the headaches of property management, right? Because when you get to 15 plus rentals, now you're having to deal with the problems of property management amplified, especially if you don't have the right systems, right? And so I still want the benefits of homeownership, but I don't want the headaches of property management. So wraps is the best of both worlds. I just sit back and collect $800 difference arbitrage every month, sometimes $1,000, in perpetuity for 30 years or more. So I love wraps. I've talked about a lot of strategies. There's a whole lot more. There's lease options under here. A lot of people do the Airbnb arbitrage, which I would say would fall under the deal service arbitrage. Because while I say it falls under the deal service, because basically you don't own the house and you're providing a hospitality service. You get the property under, lease with the landlord, and you're providing a hospitality service. So you don't own the house in that scenario. So these are, just a handful. There's a ton of other strategies that you can do in the world of real estate. There are people that do RV parks. There's so many strategies and ways to make money. These are, 10 ways that I've utilized to make millions of dollars in real estate. So earlier in the video, I said I have a pro tip for beginners. My pro tip is start with one. Whatever it is, start with one, focus on one, master that one before you start to branch out. Because if you just go chasing all these different strategies, you find that you never hit the inflection point on one strategy where you truly understand it and you truly start getting traction, where you start seeing results, right? Because when you start, there's a ramp up period where the efforts you're putting in don't necessarily translate into success metrics or results until you get to an inflection point. And if you don't persevere long enough and you start with wholesaling, you're like, okay, let me try rentals. Now, real estate is so illiquid of an asset that if you don't do it right, you could put yourself back 2-3 years if you get yourself into a bad rental, because it's an illiquid asset. You can't it's not easy to just turn around and swipe up and sell it like stocks are. So that's my pro tip. Pick one strategy and start with. If you don't have income, focus on this real estate deal service, right? It's income before wealth, right? Build your income where you have good amount of income coming in before you start looking into the wealth column, right? So I started with wholesaling, did a bunch of deal service, and then amplified my income going to fix and flipping, getting bigger margins before I started coming into this buy and hold column. So that's my pro tip. Figure out the strategy that works for you, get deep in it, and ultimately you can start to branch out. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like, leave a comment of what you enjoyed the most, and I'll do more deep dives like this in the future. So stay tuned.